So picking up your first open back headphone can be quite hard, but what's harder is making sure that you get the right DAC and amp, it has enough power for your headphones, and that the overall synergy sounds good. If you find yourself bothered with any of these questions, then you should definitely keep watching this video. Hey audiophiles, it's Ian here from Headphone Zone. Today's video is super important. We're answering one of the most asked questions by audiophiles out there. Which open back headphone should I get? Now for the sake of people just getting started in this hobby, let's understand why would you even consider an open back headphone over a regular one. So this here is your typical closed back headphone. As you can see, the outer part is completely sealed off, and this allows for great isolation when you're listening to your music. It's ideal when you're commuting or traveling around because it helps you really focus on your music and cuts you out from the rest of the distractions in your surrounding. However, this is also the biggest downside. Because of the vacuum-like seal, you'll find that music doesn't sound as natural like it would coming from a 2-channel speaker. If you want to achieve something similar on headphones, you need this, an open back headphone. As you can see, the ear cup have this mesh kind of design, and that's done on purpose. You see, the main purpose for this is to let air flow outside the headphone. What this does to your music listening, it makes music sound a lot more natural and better spaced out. The ventilation on an open back headphone is also a lot more comfortable, where you can listen to music for an extended period of time. With closed back headphones, that's simply not possible. However, there's a catch. You see, unlike closed back headphones, which can simply be taken with you on the go, open back headphones will restrict you to indoor use, and that's because of the sound leak. Secondly, you'll also need to make sure you're using the right amplifier along with your headphones to make up for any of those volume dropouts due to the open back design. So today we'll be discussing 5 setups that you should definitely consider if you're looking for your first open back headphone. So for the first setup of the day, we have the Headphone Sundara along with the FiiO K7. Now the Sundara is not just a great choice for an open back headphone, but even if you want to try out planar magnetic technology for the very first time at an affordable price range, the Sundara works as a great headphone for that. Now, for around 24,000, you'll find that you get yourself a headphone which is quite well put together. The entire headphone is made from this nice metallic construction which feels quite sturdy for the price range. And Headphone have also gone with that suspension style of a headband rather than the headband you get with the Edition XS. I personally didn't prefer that as much. Now, the ear cups don't have that swivel mechanism like some other headphones do, so if that's something you like when you're wearing your headphones, you may want to take that into consideration while picking up the Sundaras. Now, the Headphone Sundaras, in my opinion, I think they are a bit on the balance side when it comes to the overall sound signature of these. However, they do have a tendency to stray slightly towards that treble region, and it can be a bit sibilant if certain tracks demand it or if you give too much power for the headphones. Now, I found that the biggest strength of this headphone is its capability in terms of instrument separation and even the soundstage. It by no means is the widest out there, but mind you, if this is your first open back headphone you're trying out, you'll be pleasantly surprised with what the Headphone Sundara has to offer. Now, in order to make the Headphone Sundara sound good, you need to make sure you pair it with the right DAC and amp. And that's where I find that the FiiO K7 comes in. You'll find that it pairs along well with the Sundaras, and that's because it's using dual AKM4493S chips. Apart from that, you have multiple digital options at the back. So you have a USB-A, optical, coaxial, all of the necessary ports you would need from a desktop DAC. But what I find really impressive is that it has the ability to send a line out as well as a line in signal. I don't find a lot of DACs in this range offering that feature, and it can be quite helpful if you're using it with a pair of active speakers. At the front, along with the volume knob, of course, you'll find that you have a 6.3 headphone output, which is your standard to be expected from any desktop DAC, but you also have a 4.4 balanced output. So if you want to use balanced cables with the Headphone Sundara, and I do recommend using it, it does make a lot of difference, you'll find that the two really go well together, and it's kind of like a future-proof DAC that you can use, not only just for the Sundaras, but any other open back headphones you get later on. For the second setup, we have the FiiO FT3, the 32 ohm variant, along with the topping DX3 Pro Plus. So the FiiO FT3, much like the Sundaras, I think is a well put together headphone. You'll find it's using this industrialistic design and it's using metal in the right places, along with that suspension design, because it's just a very comfortable type of headband to have for longer extended periods. However, the headphones will run you a little bit more than the Headphone Sundaras. Now, these are around 29,000, but I feel where the price is justified is along with the accessories you get in the box. So you'll find that you have this nice hard carrying case, which you don't get along with the Sundaras. Along with that, you also have swappable terminations. So right out of the box, if you want to use these headphones with balanced DACs and with the balanced cables, you have all of that available to you. More so, you have 2 sets of ear pads and a very nice, sturdy and durable cable. However, I find that the length of the cable to be a bit of an annoyance because it's just too long for my liking and has this tendency to get tangled super easily. For a headphone like this where you will be sitting at a desk, I think a shorter cable would be a lot more preferred. Now, the actual impressive stuff for me is inside these headphones. It's using a 60mm dynamic driver. Now, that would automatically let you assume that these headphones are super bass heavy monsters, but that's not the case. I think the tuning is quite well done on these. Again, they're relatively well balanced, and I found that the bass is quite nicely done. It's not too overpowering, and it's got enough mid-bass presence where it would make genres like pop, classic rock, even metal to a point, quite enjoyable without it being too fatiguing or in your face. The mid-range is also pleasantly done where you have enough presence for vocals, both male and female, and that treble also is relatively smooth. It never gets too in your face, nor would you face sibilance issues like this on the FT3 compared to something like the Sundaras. But I do have some nitpicking with this headphone. I found that they're not the most resolving out there, and even when it comes to things like instrument separation, I enjoyed the way that the Sundaras were able to handle those things, right? Apart from that, you'll find that the soundstage is also not the widest out there. I think the Sundara does a slightly better job. And one thing you want to keep in mind is if you are like me and have slightly larger ears, the inside of your ears can touch the circumference of the ear pads, and that can kind of affect listening hours, especially if you're someone who likes sitting for about 2 or 3 hours continuously while listening to your music. Now, the FIO FT3 I have here with me is not the most demanding headphone out there, especially the 32 ohm version. So I find that it pairs quite nicely with something small but still very capable, like the topping DX3 Pro Plus. Now, for a desktop DAC, this has all the inputs that you would need. It has not just one but two coaxial inputs along with an optical and a USB-B input. Along with that, you also have a Bluetooth antenna which does aptX LL, aptX HD as well as LDAC playback. So if you want Bluetooth high-res capabilities, this little DAC can do that. You have all of that going out to two RCA outputs, so you can connect this to another amplifier or your set of active speakers, so it makes for a perfect desktop companion. At the front, you have the small volume wheel, which also doubles up as an input selector and different modes you can kind of circle through just by using that knob. And I'm really going to go out and say that I prefer LED screens compared to just LED lightings. It's a lot more visible, and you can actually see file formats, and going through different settings is a lot more nicer on an LED screen compared to just referring to lightings, because every brand has their own lighting, and it's really annoying to keep referring to manuals with different brands of DACs out there. Just beside the LED screen, you'll find you have a 3.5 output. Now this will put out around 1800 milliwatts of power, which for a 32 ohm headphone like this should work just fine. The only place that I find this is a bit lacking and it's not a perfect 10 on 10 is that it's missing any type of balanced outputs. But even when all that is said and done, I think this is a perfect companion for a desktop headphone like the FT3, and it deserves a place on your desktop setup. So setup number 3, we have the Sennheiser HD650 along with the Yeoman stamp. Now, you know I just had to have the HD650. It's a timeless headphone to have. The most impressive thing about the 650s is the ability to have that mid-range be very pleasant and just very appealing to listen to. I find that if you're into vocal-based, acoustic, pop, and a little bit of EDM, you'll find that the 650s scale up quite well. Whether it's male or female vocals, the headphones have that ability to just, have everything nicely spread out. And the way that these present vocals out there, I feel that no other headphones are able to do it, especially at this price. Now you'll find that unlike the FT3 or the Sundaras, the 650s go with an all-plastic build. So it's not really a plus when it comes to durability, and you'll have to really take care of these because if you're rough with them, I can see the hinges or the headband easily breaking. In fact, I've heard a lot of customers out there who are 650 users complain with stuff like the headband breaking quite easily. So you want to take care of that. However, the all-plastic design does mean that the weight is definitely kept on minimum. So you'll find that listening hours on this is a breeze. You can really have these for around 4 or 5 hours without needing to take a break. And that's not just because of the plastic design, but also because of the way that the ear pads are shaped. You'll find it goes for that oval design, which is much more likely to the human anatomy compared to something like the FT3 and Sundaras, which go for the circular design, which kind of has a tendency to touch your inner ear. Now, because these are such intimate sounding headphones, you'll find that imaging and separation is quite crisp and clear, but the soundstage is definitely not there. You'll find that it's quite opposite. In fact, these are more narrowed in, and that might not be such a bad thing, especially if you're listening to more one-on-one stuff like acoustic tracks or where there's just vocals and instruments at the background. It really sets you into the room with the rest of the singers. But if your listening experience is more for soundtracks or where you just want to be immersed with music or even use your open back headphones for movies, you find that the narrow soundstage on the 650s can be a little bit of a letdown. Now, you might seem surprised that there's no tube amplifier over here. In fact, it's a solid state amp and DAC, and that's for good reason. Now, the 650s really do sing well with a tube amplifier, but you'll find that you'll have to really spend a lot to get a proper tube amplifier to match up with the 650s. All of the budget-friendly tube amps I tried really doesn't pair up with the 650 well, and it doesn't give you that characteristic that you can get with a good tube amp. So instead, you'll find I have Serbian-made Yeoman stamp. This is a great DAC and amp to pair along with the 650, and I'll tell you exactly why. So under the hood, it's using an ESS 9280 chipset inside, and we all have the typical notion of ESS Sabre chip sounding a little bit bright. However, you'll find that the way that the ESS chip is integrated with the rest of the DAC, it comes out quite neutral, and because of which it allows the 650 to do its thing without interrupting or adding too much coloration to the sound. Now, apart from being built like an absolute tank, I like that the stamp goes for a more minimalist approach. So you'll find just very minimal indicators and switches on the front, starting from the on-off switch. Just besides that, you have a D and A switch. That means they can either engage the digital inputs or the analog inputs, letting you use it as a DAC or an amplifier. And bang in the middle, you have that big volume knob, which I quite like. Because if you're normally using desktop DACs and amps with smaller volume knobs, you'll find that it's quite finicky to use, especially if you're someone who deals with desktop clutter. On top of that, you have two headphone outputs. You have a 6.3 unbalanced out as well as a 4.4 balanced output. Now with the 650s, I tried the unbalanced cable, and just around 12 o'clock in terms of volume, I was quite happy with the listening levels I was at. Plus, there was enough dynamics to really make these headphones sing. So if you want to swap headphones and get the 4.4 cable, you can also do that with the stamp. And because of that, I think the two pair really well. Now, because of the unique ability to use this just as an amplifier or as a DAC and amp, you have quite unique inputs and outputs at the back. So you're given a pair of RCA inputs as well as a pair of RCA outputs, and you have 4.4 balanced in as well as 4.4 balanced out, which is quite nice. So if you want to use this just as an amp or just take care of the DAC stage of it, you really are spoiled for choice, where you can kind of use balanced as well as unbalanced ins and outs. In terms of digital inputs, I feel it's a little bit limited. You just have USB-B, so it's meant to be used as a desktop setup with your laptop or PC. If you want to take other sources like an AVR receiver or, I don't know, maybe like a CD player or something like that, you'll find that you really can't use this DAC in those setups. However, a cool but quirky feature I found on the DAC, which you just don't get on any other DACs, is the voltage selector. So you can switch between 230 volts here, which we use in India, or 115 volts, which you may want to use somewhere in North America or USA. So if you were to migrate and want to carry your DAC along with you, with this, you can. Setup number 4. This is different but unique. We have the Grado SR80X, paired with the tiny but very powerful Hi-Fi Audio Uno. Now you'll find what's unique about the Grado SR80X or the entire Grado series is that these are on-ear open-back headphones. So if you ever tried a pair of over-ear headphones and found them to be uncomfortable or too large for your head, you'll find that the Grados with their on-ear design are going to be a lot more comfortable, because they kind of sit on your ears exactly on this ear pinna, and they have this soft ear cushion, which makes it a lot more easier to wear compared to over-ear headphones. Apart from being on-ear, these are also super light. You'll find that there's very little padding on the headband or excessive metal materials used. As much as possible, they've gone with the strong yet durable plastic construction. So you'll find that even if you need to wear these headphones for longer hours, it's not really too much of an issue. Where the main part comes is its sound quality. It's a little bit unique even in its approach when it comes to music. You'll find that the headphones are using dynamic drivers throughout the entire series, and the main way that these are tuned is to be a little bit more towards the brighter side. Now, this is going to be really helpful if you're someone who likes vocals or listens to a lot of instruments, so I would say classical jazz, even symphony music. You'll find that these headphones are able to kind of give a lot of emphasis on those regions, and that's mainly the mid and opening up to the treble extension areas. Because of which an obvious disadvantage is both in terms of the bass when it comes to the kind of seal you get because of the on-ear design, as well as the sound signature. So if you're someone who likes that pumpy or slamming bass, you're much better off getting a good open back dynamic or planar headphone. These are not going to cut it. Now, because the Grados are so easy to power, you can also use them with a dongle DAC or a very tiny desktop DAC like I have here. The Hi-Fi Uno, I feel, pairs very well with the Grados. Under the hood, it's using an ESS Sabre chip. Quite unusual of Hi-Fi, as they normally go with their Cirrus Logic for portable, or they go for their Per Brown DAC chips in the rest of the desktop lineup. You'll find the Uno, while small, it's still very capable in delivering good power to make sure that there's good dynamics on the headphone, as well as you have the necessary inputs and outputs. Because of the small construction, you're just given the essentials. You have a USB-C input, and you have two RCA outs if you want to take it to another larger amplifier or a set of active speakers you may have on your desk. Apart from that, in front, you have a very tiny volume knob, which also acts as the on and off switch. And just besides that, you will have a 3.5 headphone out. So because of the small power output from this, you're looking at driving relatively easy to power headphones or IEMs along with it. So you're just given a 3.5 out. And besides the volume knob, you also have a power match and an equalizer function to further allow you to customize the sound quality when you're listening to any headphones or IEMs with the Hi-Fi Uno. So for our final setup, we have the legendary DT990 Pro from Pair Dynamic along with the FIO K11. A headphone like the DT990 Pro really needs no introduction. Over the last 25 years, a headphone like this has been a fan favorite with a lot of beginner audiophiles, and even today, if you walk into any of the studios in India or abroad, you'll find a DT990 Pro always on the mixing desk. Now for the 990 Pro, you'll find that the entire construction is made out of plastic, apart from the yokes, which are metal, but even still, I would say it's a fairly well put together headphone. So the 650 we spoke about earlier, even that's made entirely of plastic. But if I put both of them together, I would say that the 990 Pro is a lot more durable in terms of construction. It just feels a lot nicer in the hand. A good addition I felt was the Weller ear pads that you get. These are nice and soft, and even for longer hours, they feel quite comfortable. Do keep in mind that if you are someone who is in a very humid temperature or climate, the Velour pads can get a little bit more sweaty than the regular protein leather pads. Now, attached to this headphone is this coil cable. It terminates in a 3.5 termination, but of course you can add the 6.3 to it to use along with desktop DACs. Do keep in mind it is attached to one side of the headphone, so you're not going to be swapping these out for balanced cables. Now, when it comes to the sound signature on the DT990 Pros, much like any other studio headphones out there, you'll find that there's big emphasis on the mid-range and the top end, especially in that treble region. The bass is nice, it's tight, it's going to be punchy, but not the most best and accurate bass out there. So if you're someone who likes a lot more immersive or more fuller bass experience, these are not really going to cut it. You're better off with some of the other headphones that we discussed. Now, you'll find that something like the mid-range and treble are done very well on this headphone, and that's the least I expect from a studio headphone, especially like the DT990 Pro. The bass is tight and it has that energy to it, but if you're someone who likes a bit more fuller bass when you're listening to music, you'll find that the 990 Pro probably don't deliver in that aspect. That being said, they also have a tendency to peak a little bit towards trebles. In fact, I found that these can be a bit more sibilant than the Sundaras. A place where the 990 shine though is the sound staging capabilities. There's a reason that people use these for mixing, and even if you're just listening to music as an audiophile or even gaming, you'll find that because of the wider soundstage, this does a great job in keeping that sense of space throughout the track. Unlike the DT770, which is the close-back counterpart of the 990 Pros, you can get that headphone in three variants, a 3280 or a 250 ohm variant. But with the 990 Pro in India, you're stuck with the 250 ohm variant, so you will need to make sure that you're using it with a strong mixing desk or a strong DAC and amp. Well, the one I have here is the FIO K11. Now, this almost looks like a mini Mac Mini, if that makes sense, but it's quite powerful. At the front, you have the small volume knob, which also doubles up as an input and output selector, and you have this LED screen to indicate all of your different modes and the sample rate you are currently listening at, and you have two headphone outs. You have a regular 6.3 output as well as a 4.4 output. Now on top you have the FIO branding, but that's not all. You have lights under there, and you can really customize these lights with different RGB colors. So if you're someone who already has an RGB theme going on your desktop setup, you'll find that this blends in quite easily. Even for inputs, when it comes to the digital inputs at the back, you kind of have your bare essentials like the USB-C, optical, as well as a coaxial input. So I think you covered on all bases over there. And you have a set of RCA outs, of course, now to take into an external amplifier if you think that the power on this device is less, or you can take it into active speakers and use this as your desktop DAC. So under the hood in the K11, you'll find they're using a Cirrus Logic DAC chip, and I feel that it pairs quite well with something like the DT990 Pro. You really have to be careful with sibilant-prone headphones, because if you choose a DAC that's a little bit on towards the analytical side, along with headphones which are sibilant-prone, the overall combination can sound a little bit of a hot mess, and that's not something you want to listen to for long listening hours. So with the K11, you'll find that it doesn't add too much color, nor does it add too much brightness to the sound. It allows the DT990s to breathe and sing in the right places, and even the amplifier stage on this particular DAC is quite powerful. I found myself using the unbalanced ports, obviously, with the 990 Pro, and just around 50 to 60% volume was more than enough to get the right amount of dynamics. But do keep in mind, this also has a 4.4 balanced output. So if you have other headphones that you want to pair with this and get more power, that's very possible with the K11. So we discussed 5 open back headphones and their accompanying desktop DACs and amps that you should consider. Now, you have to remember, none of these setups are set in stone. If you want to swap out the DACs and headphones with each other, you're most welcome to do so. From my personal testing and putting all of my listening hours in, I found that these setups work really well because they're able to take care of the power-hungry, demanding side of the headphone, and the amplifier and DAC pair well with the tonality of the headphone. So if you're really out there and overwhelmed with all of the options and really want to narrow in on a headphone and a DAC and amp for the very first purchase, then I think a setup from here should be helpful. So that's going to do it for this one. If you made it so far, thank you so much for watching, and do comment down below which was your first open back headphone and desktop DAC and amp setup. I'm very interested to know. If you want to try any of the products we spoke about today, you're most welcome to drop in our Experience Studio here in Mumbai or catch us at one of our Headphone Connect events happening in the city near you. That's going to be it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Happy listening.